Men of Reddit, what's your creepy girl story? Story 1. I met a girl online. She seemed normal enough, so we ended up going out for a drink. I found out that night that she actually lived an hour away in a rural town, but whatever. Well, we went out, had a drink, then went to go play pool. We drove over in my vehicle, and when we got to the pool hall, she checked her phone and saw that she had a text from her ex-boyfriend. She proceeded to cry incessantly. I was trapped, I didn't know what to do, so I offered to take her back to her car. She said she wasn't sure if she could drive and asked if I could take her home. I declined, saying it wouldn't be a good idea because A, her car was like a mile away, B, she lived an hour away, C, how in the hell did she plan to get her car the next day? So she agrees for the night to end, all the while apologizing vigorously. The next day, she texts me, apologizes, and offers to buy me lunch. She seemed alright when we were getting to know each other, and I was bored, so I figured, what the hell, and gave her another shot. She brought her kids to the lunch. When I saw them get out of the car, I texted her and said that it wasn't okay for me to meet them. She became irate and said her sitter canceled at the last minute. Even though the drive was an hour long from her house, she didn't find it important to ask if it would be weird for her kids to come. It was at that point that I stated I was no longer interested. Now for the creepy part. 2 days later, she texted me, but I didn't respond. She kept at it and kept asking if I wanted to go out the next weekend. After multiple texts, I messaged her and said I wasn't interested and I had plans to take my friend out for her birthday. This resulted in even more irate messaging about how she wasn't comfortable with me going out with other girls and so forth. This resulted in her getting blocked. Turns out she took a guess on where we would go, since there was only one nightclub in the town, and she showed up. I had to tell the birthday girl that I was leaving and to call me when she was ready to go. My night was ruined. A birthday girl got home okay, in case you're wondering. But wait, there's more. A couple of weeks after that, there was an ice storm and the power had gone out in the area. I ended up going over to a friend's house to hang out since they had a generator. We were playing cards and enjoying ourselves. Suddenly, I get a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Are you alright? I'm really worried," the message read. "I'm fine. Who is this?" I replied. "It's creepy girl's name," she responded. I ignored it and put my phone down. The next message sent chills down my spine. "I'm really worried. I'm standing outside your house and all the lights are off. Are you sure you're okay?" She had never been to my house and I had never given her my last name. My final message before blocking her involved not contacting me or I would call the police. It turns out she was a secretary or something for a police department, and she ran my tag to find out where I lived. Then she drove over an hour to my house in the midst of an ice storm, then got a new number all so she could check up on me. Edit. To answer a few questions. This all happened 6 or 7 years ago, so not recently by any stretch. While I can't prove she ran my plate, I was using a Google Voice number attached to an email address which didn't have any of my personal information and was used for this very purpose. Joke's on me, I guess. I found out she worked at the police department through simple conversation online. We talked for about 2 weeks before meeting, so I knew where she worked, among other things. I didn't turn her in, and I won't. She was a single mother, and the father of the kids was in another state. She had supposedly been abused, and turning her in would have gotten her fired and or arrested. While I realized what she did was illegal, I didn't feel it would be right to put the little kids through that. I have no idea what she did with the kids during the ice storm. Her parents lived in the area, so I assume they went there. I have no idea where she is, but I'm pretty sure she's no longer at the police department. And lastly, I'm fine and haven't heard from her since. I also don't live at that house, so surprise visits probably aren't a thing. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. Girl in my dorm. She had a crush on my roommate. My roommate clearly didn't like and told her several times. Things got out of hand, and there were times where my roommate would come running back to the room yelling, lock the door, and moments later the girl and her friend would try to barge in without permission. The creepy thing is this next part. Apparently, one night we accidentally left our room unlocked, and she decided to sneak in and play/rub our heads. We didn't wake up, but her roommate told us what she did a couple days later. I haven't seen her in about a year, and I'm quite glad. Story 3. This younger girl who I never even spoke to once in high school had a crush on me. I got a note from her in my locker asking if I wanted to go out with her. I had no idea of how to get it back to her, so I just wrote no and taped it to my locker. Then, she started following me everywhere. I would try to talk to her, but she would just keep walking, pretending I wasn't talking to her. This goes on for like 2 years. Then I was hanging out by myself one day around the neighborhood, and she comes walking up with these 3 guys who wanted to kick my butt for some dumb unrelated stuff. She somehow found out about it and brought them to me. After an embarrassing scene with me diffusing the situation with these angry gentlemen, they leave and she finally sits down on the curb right next to me and starts flirting. All I could do was just stare right at her enormous bangs with a WTF expression until she got embarrassed and left. Story 4. I was bored once at a small local festival and didn't want to be there, so I just got a drink and started walking around aimlessly when I noticed a fire breather. The display was pretty interesting and she was hot. When she was on break, she went to get a drink and we started talking. She seemed nice. We had a laugh, but her break was up and she resumed her display, so I left her to it and continued to wander around. 5 minutes later, security was called to her display. Turns out some crazy girl whom I'd never met before was following me around the festival and assaulted the fire breather. She claimed that me and Crazy, were together, and the fire breather was trying to break us up. Story 5. I've got 2. First one was when I was 15. I was walking past my school and about to cross the road when a trio of drunk women in their 40s or 50s started hassling me about how good I looked, pressing me into the wall and surrounded me so that I couldn't get out and holding me back while they copped feels. Not a fun experience. Especially when you can't even tell people about it or how creeped out it's left you, because as a guy you should somehow be proud when women 3 times your age are grabbing you through your trousers. Anyway, the other one was about 4 years ago. I was 22 and asked a girl I'd met out. She seemed nice at first. Met her in a little cafe while I was waiting to meet some friends, and we got talking about Pokemon and some other stuff for 20 or 30 minutes before adding each other on Facebook. Only weird thing was in that time she told me she'd been assaulted by her ex. I thought maybe she was just being open about it as a way of dealing with the trauma, so I let it slide and messaged her for a bit to see if she'd be interested in a date. She told me that she already had a boyfriend, but that she'd love to hang out as friends, which was fair enough, so I agreed to that, and we met up a few days later. She'd brought her boyfriend with her, which I expected. I got the sense he wasn't too comfortable with me, which I can understand, but what threw me was that she also brought her ex. I can't 100% say that it was the same ex she mentioned, but he really gave off that vibe with the way he talked and behaved around her. She kept on talking about dead babies and abortions obsessively as well. You couldn't change the subject at all. Creeped me the hell out. So I just sat there with a smile and acted civil, while internally going, please don't kill me, and I haven't spoken to her since. Story 6. Not a guy myself, but one I dated had a couple fun stories. The first one was a girl he got set up with by friends on a blind date. As they went out to dinner, they passed a jewelry store, and she insisted on going in so they could pick out rings for when they get engaged. He paid for dinner and noped right out. The second one went better until he took her back to her place, where she went to the kitchen, pulled a nice big sharp chef's knife, and told him he was staying the night. He said, I did what any red-blooded American male would do. Agreed, but said I needed to use the bathroom, where I promptly crawled out the window and never saw her again. Story 7. I was at a friend's birthday party for her dog, probably was just an excuse to have people over and get drunk, and another friend, let's call her M, is also there. I had known M for a couple years, but I only really ever see her a couple times a year. She is very drunk and also very married. Her husband was also at the same party. At one point in the night, she asks me if I have a girlfriend. I did not. If I'm looking for a girlfriend, where I'd been looking for a girlfriend, etc. Then she says that I'd been looking in all the wrong places and that if I wanted a good girl, I should let her know. During this conversation, she also kept trying to grab my hand, so at one point I made sure to always be holding a handful of mini pretzels in both of my hands, as a sort of excuse to not be able to hold them. I can't hold hands if I'm holding pretzels. Logic. Then finally she says, I like you. I really like you. I'm like, okay. This repeats for a while until she says, stop saying okay. It makes me feel like you think I'm BSing. Then she keeps following me around the room and keeps trying to make me dance with her until I leave. Her husband was pretty much always in the same room as us, no more than a few feet away while all this was happening. I thought I was crazy and imagining it all until another friend asked me on the same night as we were leaving, was M trying to hit on you? Story 8. Seemingly normal looking attractive girl. Took her out on a date. We got drunk. Breaks down saying how she used fentanyl with her ex and ended up in a hospital. Now she has to use a catheter and bag for the rest of her life, and it has screwed up her urinary system. She was screaming, I have a drug-induced bladder disorder. She is 23. Cried. Tried to get me to finger her beside the catheter. Wasn't feeling it. Then decided I was the enemy and called cops saying I'm assaulting her. I recorded her as she went crazy, calling me names. Cops show up. She's having some sort of mental breakdown. She ends up transported to a psych observation unit at 1 a.m. Ended up playing poker. Couple days later, she texts me and asks, "Wanna hang out?" Guess what I did? Story 9. I was like 13, 14 years old. Was playing Gaia Online, some lame social networking game from like 2002, and met some girl. We hit it off and started chatting over AIM. Definitely did the cringy cybering thing too. Well, eventually she comes clean and that she's actually like late 20s, like 28 or something. Being a frisky 14-year-old dude, that didn't bother me one bit. So then we start video chatting and she's like fully pleasuring herself on cam with me. Again, 14-year-old me is not seeing an issue with this. Eventually, she starts talking about coming over to visit so we can actually bang. Again, not seeing the issue beyond the fact that she really was not very attractive. But still, I didn't think she was serious until she emails me a copy of her flight itinerary. At this point, I panicked and blocked her, deleted my AIM and stayed away from the computer for like 6 months, and never heard from her again. Story 10. I had a friend who went absolutely crazy after her boyfriend broke up with her. Cutting, trying to force him to get back together, getting him kicked out of the group to isolate him only for it to backfire and throw a fit, etc. And that was only freshman year. When he started dating another girl from our group senior year, she pretended to be cool, only to lie to the girl and convince her to break up with him because he was definitely texting her last night. Oh, and also he told her he hated her and that she was ugly and that he actually loved her, crazy girl, and was only with the new girl to make her jealous. I don't know if he believed it, but many other things happened too. Story 11. During my last year of high school, I would tutor students after school. One day, about halfway through the year, a new girl came in and sat next to me. The first thing she said was something along the lines of, "Do you want to see my birth control?" She had an implant in her arm and showed me where it was. She then felt my arm and told me I was hairy. For the rest of the time, she kept prying for personal info, like who my friends were and where I lived. I didn't see her in tutoring after that, but one day during lunch she came up to my table where I was just chatting with my friends and inserted herself into the conversation before leaving randomly. I heard a few days later that she was suspended for either having drugs or a knife in her backpack. Story 12. I started going to a new doctor. The receptionist was cute, so I flirted a bit. In a waiting room with other patients around. It was pretty innocent. She reciprocated. I figured it was all in good fun. She escalated a bit. Stuff like scheduling me for days when she was there, calling me directly with reminders, etc. Then she went into the records, got my cell number, and started texting me, telling me that she wants to meet up. She's not happy with her husband, they never bang anymore, etc. I noped out of that as fast as I could. Story 13. A few months ago, I was walking home from school when this drunk middle-aged woman grabbed me by the arm, wrapped me in a bear hug against the wall, and started grinding on me. I wasn't interested. I had an exam the next morning, and I was just trying to get home. She wouldn't let me go, and she forced my hands onto her breasts and in between her legs, luckily over her clothes. She also started punching me for no reason, as well as saying/doing extremely racist Asian stereotypes. I'm Asian. Eventually I got away, but I've never fully recovered from the experience, and I've basically never been able to talk about it with IRL friends. Doubt I ever will. Story 14. It was when I was back in school. There was this girl who used to sit just behind my seat. She was good looking, but very distant from everyone and talked with nobody. Her social skills were zero. But I tried talking to her. We got to know each other, and I thought we became friends. We started sitting in the same seat. One day she said, "I know why you're friends with me." I said, "Why?" She says, "You want this, right?" And then she pulls up her skirt slightly and panties down and showed me the whole thing, whose image is implanted in my memory. We were 16, by the way. Then she giggles, I looked at her exhibition and then back into her eyes. I could see a psychotic smile on her face. She was the creepiest girl I'd met in my whole life. Story 15. I've had a couple semi-stalkerish women who creeped on me, which is weird because I'm not even good looking, but my favorite creepy girl story was just a one-off funny moment. When I was 22, I was hanging out with a couple of friends, just grilling and drinking, when one of them was suddenly like, "Do you guys want to go to a costume party?" I mean, naturally, we were like, yes. So we slapped together some quick costumes and hopped in an Uber. We showed up to this place and it was less a costume party and more 6 people in an apartment wearing costumes, but there was beer and a dog, so I was happy. Anyway, we spend the evening playing board games with this group of people who seem just as confused as we are. The entire night, there's this one girl who's sitting next to me on the couch, but she hasn't said a single word. Not one. I don't think much of it. Some people are shy. It's whatever. But then, during a lull in the party, out of nowhere, she gets closer to me, looks me dead in the eye, and whispers, "I like blood." Then shifts back to her spot like nothing happened. I turned to my friend and was just like, "We have to leave." I still think about that night sometimes. Story 16. This was, thankfully, an online-only interaction. It started innocently enough with this random person asking me about my religious beliefs on Twitter. I was active on Twitter then and was more than happy to talk about my beliefs. In an informative manner, never trying to convert you or this is the only right way to live kind of thing. Anyway, the conversation quickly turned weird, though, as she began asking if I thought that people who were lying about who they were should admit to their sins. I stopped replying. That's when things went really south. She began harassing me at all hours of the day on Twitter. This spread to comments on my blog and emails sent via a comment form on my blog. They were erratic and hard to make out, but I found other people she had stalked/harassed and pieced together what this was all about. You see, a few years prior, she had a beef with a guy who lives in New Zealand. He cut off contact, but she began contacting his family, friends, and boss to tell them that he did bad things to children. Now, I'm not going to spell it out, but it was inappropriate. Now, he works in a school, so this charge could end his career. Luckily, he warned his boss and they ignored the charges. Of course, it helped that her proof was that God told her. Oh, did I forget to mention that she claims she's a prophet of God, and that he literally talks to her to tell her bad things people do? Because that's exactly what she claims. And good luck arguing with God told me you're guilty. Who's she gonna believe? Your mountain of evidence or the voice of God in her head? Anyway, she found me online and came to the conclusion that I was really a faked identity for a New Zealander guy. Her evidence? We both enjoyed photography. I guess all photos posted online are really only done by me. No wonder I never have free time. As I said before, arguing with her was useless. God told her I stole the photos of my family from someone else, and I was just pretending to be a married man in New York when I was really New Zealand guy. Couldn't argue with God. I tried to contact the police, but she lived in Canada and there wasn't really anything they could do. I and others reported her Twitter account, but she always had a few spares ready to hop to. The harassment intensified as she told me that she was going to contact all the companies I did business with under my blog and tell them of my crimes. Same thing that happened to New Zealand guy, since we were the same person in her mind. I had to warn a few people preemptively just in case. She also threatened to contact the local police on me, but luckily she didn't know where I lived exactly. One of the reasons I didn't post my exact location online. She also posted threats to my wife's blog. This continued off and on for a year or so. She'd moved to another target, we'd warned said target, and they'd block her. She'd then claim that we were part of some Uber hacking group that hacked into everyone's Twitter account to force them to block her when they all really agreed with her. This, of course, also extended to police departments. We apparently hacked the police to make her complaints vanish after she was personally told that they would arrest us. Neither the hacking nor the personally told they would arrest us ever actually happened, of course. Eventually, I found her IP address and hatched a plan to block her from my website. I edited my site so she would get a 404 not found error if she tried to visit my page, while everyone else would still get the normal site. Being a web developer is handy at times. She began lauding on Twitter her success at taking me offline. Unfortunately, she's still online and still bothering people. Boy George and the head of Firefox are among her past targets. She's left me alone for years, though. I've since stopped blogging, due to life, not her, and cut back the Twitter use, so I don't think she'll ever focus on me again. I don't even wish for her to be arrested, but to get the psychiatric help that she so clearly needs. Story 17. It was my ex-girlfriend. I didn't realize she was creepy until I tried to end it and failed. First few times were my fault for being weak-willed, dumb, all that stuff. She offered me to bang or something else or just treated me kindly for a while and I thought, things can be okay again, and I resumed the relationship. At some point, I actually learned my lesson though, but it was at that point I realized she was actually my crazy ex, and it was sad. The stories are many and crazy, but the long and short of it is she told everyone we were together more than a year after I had really ended it. She enrolled at my university, giving up her dream of a different school she'd always wanted to go to and actually got into, just so she could cross paths with me. She enrolled in a class I was teaching a lab for without me knowing, showed up randomly to my parents' house and told them we were still together, and the first time it actually worked. Story 18. Last year I dated this one girl for a few weeks. She was a nice girl, but there were some obvious red flags that slowly cropped up over the time. Overall, it was because she had absolutely no life. No interests, no friends, and she had close to a tantrum when I tried introducing her to my friends. No hobbies besides reality television, still working at her high school fast food job despite being 32, that kind of stuff. She was upset when we broke up, but overall didn't make a huge deal out of it. She wanted to stay in contact, but we lost touch almost immediately as I didn't want to drag anything out. 6 months later, I was back to dating, and had made it official with a different girl. While out at a friend's house one night, I decided to take a selfie of us and throw throw it on Facebook. In the morning, my girlfriend alerted me to a nasty comment left by the previous girl. It was middle school level stuff. She outright insulted my girlfriend, saying literally, "Ew, she has big teeth," adding that she thought she was going to have a second chance with me. Keep in mind, we had absolutely zero communication in those 6 months. Never once did I try to give her the impression I was interested in seeing her again. I was super upset at her with the teeth comment, and my GF was a little upset, but at least we've gotten a few laughs out of it since then. I'm glad I dodged that bullet. I'm actually sparing you guys a ton of details. There were a lot of tiny things she did while we were dating that made me realize how much of a loser she really was. But I don't have the time to type up an entire essay on it.